Trump's administration imposed on Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Panama to be safe third countries to receive migrants deported from the United States. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, made a desperate swap proposal to Russia. And the Palestinian resistance accuses U.S. President Donald Trump of promoting ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip and warns him that he will face a Palestinian, Arab, and Islamic response. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Trump's administration imposed on Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Panama to be safe third countries to receive migrants deported from the United States. The tour of U.S. Secretary Marco Rubio forced the administrations of the Central American nations to harness hundreds of migrants as their bargaining chips. Panama and Costa Rica are currently trying to transfer migrants willing to return to their country of origin. However, they have not even defined the operation plan, not following suit of Venezuela, a nation that has made a solid repatriation operation for over 70 years. In the meantime, hundreds of migrants are suffering from degrading treatment. The U.S. news agency Associated Press reported that one of its journalists was prevented from entering the White House for continuing to use the name Gulf of Mexico. Julie Pace, the executive editor of AP, detailed a communique issued by the executive office of the president in which they were told that if they did not align their editorial line with the executive order of President Trump renaming the Gulf, the agency would be denied access to the Oval Office. AP finds it alarming that they are being punished for this decision, calling it a violation of the First Amendment. Civil rights organizations point out that denying access to the press for disagreeing with news coverage is a practice of repressive governments. And in Mexico, the government continues to care for migrants after the cancellation of the CBP-1 program, which regulated entry into the United States. From a shelter in the capital, we have the following report.
Catherine arrived in Mexico with her 3 children. 2 of them are already attending school in the capital city, while she works in the kitchen of this care home that shelters 160 migrants.
My case is like that. We went from town to town, from bus to bus. Thank God we arrived here in Mexico City, and due to the restrictions of the neighboring country, the United States, we stayed here. Because I think that here in Mexico, they can also give me good opportunities for me and my children.
Photographs of some of the other families that have passed through the shelter are now part of this mural that reflects the gratitude and affection that accompanied them on their journey.
These photos are of people who made it to the United States to do their immigration regulation there. Some of them are from when they were here, when they were saying goodbye. And we also have other photos of when they arrived in the United States. And they contacted the team to send us photos to thank us for the attention we provide here.
Both adults and children receive, among other support, psychological care to heal the effects that may have been left by the long journeys and dangers during their journey.
There are children who experience the process as a journey, in which they tell you how they were in the jungle and got to know everything with emotion. But there are other children who had to see complicated situations and who see things with fear. There are also cultural promoters here with whom I also work.
In addition to encouraging them to draw, paint, and play in the art laboratory, they're encouraged to participate in productive projects, like this one in which plastic bottles, also known as PET bottles, are recycled, while they're taught about coexistence and family unity through the germination of seeds.
Because for all the events that are happening, the users are totally disunited. What we are doing is that with this small element of union, we are promoting care and inclusion.
These care homes will be expanded to house a total of 2,000 people, in addition to the 1,000 people receiving care from citizen organizations.
Unfortunately, the cuts in international funding announced by President Donald Trump are impacting these shelters, and that is why Mexico City is assuming the responsibility that corresponds to it.
Through multidisciplinary and, above all, focused efforts, this House of Attention to Human Mobility is especially dedicated to the issue of families. We have even had the opportunity to see how there are little ones with motor disabilities that are cared for. And there is also another similar house that is dedicated to the care of couples.
A la atención de parejas. En la Cámara, Ricardo Martínez, Daniel Rosas, Telesur, Ciudad de México.
In other news, in Ecuador, the international observer missions deny that there are indications of fraud during the elections held last Sunday, February 9th. On Tuesday, Noboa denounced irregularities in the vote count and claimed to have evidence of a possible fraud that prevented him from winning with a higher number of votes. In this regard, members of the electoral observer missions of the European Union, the Organization of American States, denied that there was any indication of fraud during the recent elections. Both missions emphasized that the elections took place in a transparent, peaceful manner with no major developments. And the Mexican Secretary of Foreign Affairs calls on the Ecuadorian government to guarantee the life and protection of the former Ecuadorian Vice President Jorge Glass. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has taken note of the decision of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to extend the precautionary measures in favor of Glass. On the basis of international law, Mexico granted asylum to the former vice president who was illegally and violently expelled from the diplomatic headquarters on April 5, 2024, by order of the President of Ecuador, Daniel Noboa. The regional body has asked to protect the health and improve the conditions of detention of Glass. We now have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English. We will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On February 6, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela denounced before the world an outrage against its sovereignty, the theft of a state-owned aircraft carried out by order of the U.S. Secretary of State, the complicity of the government of the Dominican Republic. Our correspondent has more.
This is the second Venezuelan aircraft that the Dominican government has retained in its territory and delivered to the United States. The delivery took place at the airport of La Isabela, Santo Domingo, in the presence of the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, an act that, according to analysts, demonstrates the servility of the Luis Abinader administration towards the interests of Washington.
In the case of the two airplanes, we were talking about a double theft. The fact that it was handed over to someone else does not exempt guilt. In this case, it aggravates it, because it was handed over to the imperial power of the United States of America, and that implies a crime steeped in servility, very typical of a president with the vocation of a colony governor.
Analysts
state that the delivery of the aircraft to the United States not only violates international law, but also exposes the submissive position of the Dominican government in the face of Washington's pressures.
The media show that Marco Rubio made is even more humiliating because he exhibited the president of this country, acting as a colony governor. Handing over the airplane to the United States of America is a form of humiliation. To accept that is very typical of colonial governors.
The context of
this act is part of a strategy of permanent aggression against Venezuela, which has intensified after the recent elections in the South American country. Various countries and media outlets have tried to legitimize these actions with a fierce disinformation campaign.
After the elections held in Venezuela, where there was a media campaign by the United States and its allies, and the Dominican Republic is not exempt from that, we know that the Dominican government has handled its foreign policy in a way that is very bad. From my point of view, I see it that way because it has not been a government that, instead of looking for solutions, what it is doing is aggravating the problem. I always give as an example the doctrine that Mexico has in its foreign policy of not interfering in the internal affairs of other nations, and yet it is looking for solutions and dialogue to solve the same.
Recientemente, el presidente dominicano en su rueda de prensa.
Recently, during his weekly press conference, the Dominican president was asked about the seizure of the second Venezuelan airplane, but he limited himself to blaming a U.S. court without further details.
A plane was confiscated from Venezuela. We know the U.S. justification for the confiscation, but we want to know what was the protocol that the country used to confiscate the aircraft from the U.S.
They filed a lawsuit in court, and there was a judge's order. That was the legal procedure that was followed.
El secretismo y falta de transparencia
The
sobre la
secrecy and lack of transparency regarding the confiscation of Venezuelan state-owned airplanes in the Dominican Republic has not only been applied in this case. The same happened with the first airplane, where the Dominican foreign minister assured that neither the public prosecutor's office nor the Dominican government participated in the investigation.
Today, September 2nd, a new court order was received authorizing the delivery of the aircraft to the requesting state. In this case, the United States, and therefore the Public Prosecutor's Office delivered the aircraft and the U.S. government transferred it to its country. Neither the Dominican government nor the Public Prosecutor's Office have participated in the investigation process of the United States. Only this international legal cooperation was required, and since the indicated norms were complied with and judicial orders were obtained, the Public Prosecutor's Office complied with what was ordered by the courts.
El Ministerio Público cumplió con lo ordenado por los tribunales.
Para analistas, lo que hoy se presenta como
For analysts, what is presented today as a simple confiscation is, in reality, a new episode of the economic and political war against Venezuela. Meanwhile, the Bolivarian government reiterates its rejection of these actions and calls on the international community to condemn this new violation of its sovereignty.
Para TeleSUR de Institución República Dominicana.
Leslie Voltaire, president of the Haitian Interim Council, announced that he would bring to justice all those responsible for destabilizing the country. The acting president has asked Prime Minister Alex Didier to gather information and evidence available against the persons sanctioned by the United States, Canada, and the United Nations, all allegedly linked to various crimes that have contributed to undermining the peace of the nation. Voltaire assured that they will act decisively to bring to justice all those who have promoted actions against the stability of Haiti. And the Federation of Cuban Women has expanded the legal, judicial, and social framework for the protection of girls, adolescents, and women on the island through the support for the National Response to Gender-Based Violence project. The initiative, sponsored by the United Nations Population Fund and the Canadian Embassy, responds to the national priority of ensuring a comprehensive and integrated response for the prevention of an effective response to gender-based violence. Smaida Hernandez, member of the Federation's Secretariat, points out that in Cuba no woman is helpless, but this project will guarantee attention to the more than 30,000 women in Cuba's 40 municipalities, at the same time ensuring more effective prevention and response to this type of violence.
This project presented is one of the actions that are being taken in our country to provide specific attention to the issue of violence, but its peculiarity lies in the project will get to municipalities. Therefore, it is paramount our population, our citizens, our women, our children, and our teenagers keep posted about it, so we must disseminate the project, as we are one of the institutions or an instrument to safeguard their rights and guarantees.
In the early hours of Wednesday morning, the Cuban Institute of Music confirmed the death of national singer-songwriter Eduardo Sosa. On February 3rd, Sosa suffered a hemorrhagic stroke, and after several days of illness, he passed away on Wednesday, February 12th, at the age of 52. The news was confirmed by the Cuban Institute of Music while underlining that the Cuban singer died after several days in a critical state due to the stroke. Sosa, known for his ability to fuse the trova tradition with the contemporary elements, dedicated his life to the promotion of Cuban art and to the defense of its legacy. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel and teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made a desperate proposal to swap with Russia the already Russian territories. President Zelensky is willing to swap some territories of the Kursk Russian province for others which he granted his troops to control. In response, the Russian government assured Zelensky is trying to hide Ukrainian armed forces' failure in Kursk, including 30,000 Ukrainian fatal casualties. Moreover, the Kremlin demanded Ukraine must withdraw all its remaining troops from Russia. In all, the conflict had broken out due to Ukraine not acknowledging either the 2014 referendum or the 2022 popular consultation in which the citizens of Crimea, Sevastopol, the Popular Republics of Donetsk and Lugansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson provinces have expressed their will to be Russian citizens. President Donald Trump of promoting ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip and warns him that he will face Palestinian, Arab and Islamic response. In this way, Hamas responds to the White House plan, which they describe as racist, and point out that its only objective is to eliminate the Palestinian cause. President Trump has said that the people of Gaza will go to a third country and will return to a reconstructed Gaza administered by Washington. Hamas assured that these plans will clash with a solidly unified Palestinian, Arab and Islamic resistance. They also reaffirmed their commitment to the ceasefire and recalled that it is Israel that has violated the agreement. And on Tuesday, medical sources confirmed that the death toll in the Gaza Strip rose to 48,222, the majority of whom are children and women. Health authorities confirmed that despite a ceasefire, Israel continues its massacre against Gaza. The same sources added that the number of injured people surged to 111,674 since the start of the aggression back in October 2023. Authorities warned that the figures are much higher since many victims are still under the rubble and ambulance and civil defense crews cannot reach them due to the Israeli siege. And Israel continues its aggressions against the cities of Jenin and Tulkarem in the West Bank, breaching the ceasefire agreement. After more than 2 weeks of attacks, the Israeli occupation forces assassinate at least 29 Palestinians, cause dozens of wounded, carry out illegal arrests, house demolitions, and hundreds of forced displacements. In this regard, Jenin's mayor Mohammad Jadar denounced the economic damage that exceeds $2 billion during the last 3 years. The invading regime is also increasing restrictions on the movement and access to basic services. Furthermore, Israeli troops are converting Palestinian homes into military barracks as part of Tel Aviv's expansionist plan. The Director General of the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza reported that at least 92 people have been killed in the Strip since the ceasefire was signed. In the last few days, the Israeli regime intensified its attacks, killing dozens of people and wounding at least 822. In this regard, some of the people were killed when they approached the buffer zone of the Israeli troops, where they were shot at, and others from wounds inflicted during the genocide that lasted 15 months. Should be noted that a ceasefire was signed between Israel and Hamas on January 19th, in which it was agreed that the hostages held by the Palestinian resistance movement would be released in exchange for the Palestinians held hostage in Israeli prisons. And it was also agreed that Israel would withdraw from Palestinian territory. And in Mali, the army reported Tuesday that they successfully intercepted a terrorist drone in Tessalit airport area near the border with Algeria. The General Staff of the Armed Forces carried out the operation at 9:40 a.m. local time, while monitoring a military helicopter that was at the heliport. The drone will be subjected to in-depth research to better understand its operating system and thus find out its true origin. Hours before the capture of the drone, Malian troops neutralized several terrorists and captured a miner with a radio transmitter near the border with Mauritania. And in France, the third edition of the Summit for Action on Artificial Intelligence ended on Tuesday in Paris. The final declaration expresses the need for artificial intelligence with a humane approach. The United States and the United Kingdom did not sign it. Over 100 countries took part in the summit. The gathering aimed to translate the debate on artificial intelligence into concrete actions. Almost 1,000 experts and world leaders attended this meeting to discuss scenarios to ensure that artificial intelligence does not surpass human intelligence and potentially establish a form of domination. However, the United States, represented by its Vice President James D. Vance, presented artificial intelligence as a tool for domination and rejects excessive regulation. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. With TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.